I almost shit my pants during the Borderlands movie. That is not a joke, and it has nothing to do with my score of the movie. I just wanted to open the video like that to grab your attention. But seriously, I am not a movie reviewer, so just a little heads up on that one. This isn't going to be the greatest movie review that you've ever heard in your life. And also, it's going to contain no spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything if you are going to go and see the Borderlands movie. But just to touch on again what I said about not being a movie reviewer, I am not a movie guy. It does not take a lot to impress me in movies, and oftentimes when people say that a movie is jaw-droppingly good, I find it kind of mid. Like, for example, I thought Avengers Endgame was a pretty okay movie, and I really didn't think it was anything crazy like Twitter was hyping it up to be. And I also thought other movies that people said were really bad, like Scream 6, for example, was really good. So it shouldn't shock you when I tell you that I watched the Borderlands movie today. That's right, baby. I sat myself down with the other 4 people in the theater and I watched, and I liked it. I know this is probably going to come as a shock to you guys, but I'm no stranger to PBing, and today I'm setting the world record any percent for most disliked video on my own channel. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say other than I liked the Borderlands movie, which I sure do think people are going to be surprised to hear. I know a bunch of you were probably thinking I would be super reactionary to this after Randy Pitchford blocked me on Twitter for what I can only assume was me questioning the decision making in the movie prior to its release. But come on, buddy, I had some pretty fair questions on my mind, like why is the vault slap bang in the middle of what seemed to be Crom's Canyon? So Randy, if you're watching this, please unblock me. I'm doing 10 years worth of shilling in one video right now. I'm putting my career on the line for this. God, I'm never beating the shill allegations. Also, whatever gameplay we have in the background, please don't hate me. I've had like 6 hours of sleep, man. This is the most you're gonna get. So, let me just start off by saying that overall, this is not a movie for someone who is not familiar with the universe of Borderlands. For myself, when I watched it, it seemed to be a movie which a Borderlands fan could go and have a good time with. I will outright make it clear that this isn't a great movie, and it's not a very good movie, but it's also not a horrendous movie, nor is it unwatchable like I've seen some people saying. If you read anything on Twitter, then people would lead you to believe that this is the worst movie ever made. And literally, as I'm recording this, it's got like 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is wild to me. But at the end of the day, it's not my job to care what Rotten Tomatoes says or what Twitter says. I saw that this movie had a $120 million budget and apparently debuted at 20, so it is undeniably a flop. But again, that's not my job to care about. I'm the consumer. I'm not big John Lionsgate, so why should I care how much money this movie makes? As far as I'm concerned, the reputation of Borderlands has been getting trashed and is trashed for a while now, so I don't really care what people think of this movie. Ultimately, I just care about whether or not I enjoyed it. And I did. I had a good time with this movie. Alright, enough lip lapping. Let's get into the actual movie itself. I've got some cliff notes which I wrote down on my phone while I was watching the movie. I had to very, very sneakily do that so no one would notice that it is me, EpicNNG, in the movie theater watching the Borderlands movie on launch. And right away, I'll open with what is arguably my biggest complaint with this movie, and honestly, it's probably one of 2 complaints that I have, but it is by far the biggest one. The pacing of this movie is awful. You're gonna hear that a lot, probably from every person that reviews it, and I am no different. Even as a Borderlands fan watching this, I was a little bit lost and a little bit like, whoa, how do we get here in the space of 3 minutes watching this movie? It was a very, very fast-paced movie in terms of the way they set stuff up, and not in a good way. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but a lot of the beats within this movie happen in the span of literal, like, maybe 1 to 2 minutes. And as a Borderlands fan, I can be like, okay, that's fine, I already know who this character is, or where this is, or why they're doing this, but I can't imagine a non-Borderlands fan watching this movie. Now, bear in mind, I have played Borderlands since 2009. I grew up with this game, so I'm very well versed in the universe, but there were definitely some old heads in the audience who, if they play Borderlands, then dear God. But they seemed to be very lost on what was going on, and I think that's going to be common ground with this movie. It is very all over the place in terms of what's happening. I'll give you a little heads up here. This is, I don't even think you can call this a spoiler. It's very light, but a lot of the beats in the movie are kind of just assumed that the viewer would know about it, and I'm not going to go into details on what that is, but yeah, it's just a lot of stuff just feels very shabbily thrown together, and it doesn't feel like they had enough runtime. It definitely does feel like, to Eli Roth's credit, he was familiar with the source material, did his research on the source material, but more importantly was very, very well versed on how much runtime they had, because it does feel like a lot of it is spent very efficiently shoving stuff in to the point where it begins to feel rushed. So that is the biggest complaint for me with this movie. The pacing is awful. However, I will say, in regards to actual Borderlands games like New Tales from the Borderlands and Borderlands 3, which go on for way too long, this movie is the polar opposite. It doesn't get enough runtime, and because of that, it feels like stuff is skipped. Alright, we're past the average view duration now, so if you're still here, you probably actually do want to know what I liked about this movie. But before we get there, I do have a few more complaints, so let me just get to these real quick. So the first one that I have here, aside from what I just mentioned with the pacing, is the lack of gore. This is a Borderlands movie, but it is rated PG, and it definitely shows that. There is almost no gore in this movie. It's not a huge deal for me, because honestly, I found the best way to enjoy this was to just switch your brain off and take it for what it is, and when you do that, a lot of these are non-issues, but I'm gonna bring it up anyway. There is a lack of gore in this movie, and I don't think it fits with the idea of what this movie should be. The second cliff note that I have here, or rather third cliff note, and this will actually be my last complaint for the movie, so sorry everybody who doesn't want me to shill. The costume and the prop design in this movie is really, really bad. I've been moaning about this on Twitter for a while now, but the costume and prop design in the Borderlands movie is so disjointed from what the games are that it almost feels like Eli Roth wanted to do a Mad Max movie more than he wanted to do a Borderlands movie. I'm saying Eli Roth is a very blind shot in the dark because I don't know whose decision it is for this kind of stuff or who oversees it, but overall I really do not like the costume and prop design. It doesn't feel like Borderlands, and what's really, really funny, and this isn't a spoiler, it's in one of the trailers, but there is a mask that I think it's Tina is wearing during one of the scenes in the movie, and it's a psycho mask, and this psycho mask is actually accurate to what the games have, but none of the other psycho masks in the movie are, and I just think that's so silly. But again, for someone who's never played a Borderlands game, they're not going to care about that, because honestly, they're not going to care about the movie. Alright, I got my bitching out the way, so now let me actually tell you what I do like about this movie, because remember, overall, EpicNNG did like the Borderlands movie. I want to make that very clear. I had a good time with this movie. Now, am I going to watch this movie more than once? No, because I don't do that with literally any movie ever. Sorry, buddy, but I don't have the time, man. I'm not a movie guy. But let me tell you what I liked about the Borderlands movie. So, first of all, let's start with the actors and actresses. I want to talk about the performances from Jamie Lee Curtis, starting off. Jamie Lee Curtis does a very, very good job at playing Tannis. She has respectfully gagged me. I thought she was going to be an awful Tannis, but her mannerisms and the way she talks, I don't know if she did research into the character or was shown the character, but it's kind of odd how good she is at portraying Tannis, and I gotta say, in all of my anticipation for this movie, her portrayal of Tannis isn't one that I would have predicted. It's actually kind of better, or if not spot on, to what it is in the games. So if you're a Borderlands fan, that's something to look forward to. I think she does great in this movie. I wish they would have kept her hair black, but not a huge deal in reality. Everybody on this movie is old, so I guess if you hate old people, don't watch it. Next I want to talk about Kevin Hart, because Kevin Hart has received an infernal war from social media ever since he got announced for this movie because of his height, and also because he, quote, can't do serious roles. And boy, oh boy, does he shut the haters up in this movie. I don't actually know if I can call out more than 2 or 3 times that Roland was making jokes. All in all, he is one of the strongest characters in the movie, and I really, really liked his performance. I've never been a fan of Kevin Hart's comedic performances in shows and movies, and it's not because I don't find Kevin Hart funny. I find him to be very funny. It's just that I do like it when Kevin Hart takes himself a little more serious on screen, and I'm glad that we got to see that side of him in this movie. So for anybody who was worried about Kevin Hart turning this into a one-on-one comedy fest. He doesn't do that here. He just does not. Now, next up, another highlight of the movie for me is Ariana Greenblatt. I am not too familiar with her work. I know she was in the Barbie movie, but I gotta tell you, she is one of the highlights of this movie. I am very rarely wowed by someone's acting, but she is a very, very talented actress, and while I don't think a movie like Borderlands is the right way to show off her skill set, if you've seen the Barbie movie, you'll have to let me know, but overall, I actually was very impressed with her acting, and I think she's going to be a very, very huge actress. Apparently, she's already like mega rich and shit, so I mean, good for you, Ariana. She was very, very good in this movie, and I thought she pulled off Tina very, very well. And finally, Jack Black and Cate Blanchett are also really good in the movie. I'm going to get to Jack Black in a second because I have a whole nother issue with that, but for Lilith in particular, I'm not crazy wowed by Cate Blanchett's performance, but overall she is a big focus of this movie, and she's just good. I don't really have much more to say about her. She's just good. She's good in this movie. She didn't blow me away, but overall she isn't the worst pick for Lilith when you see her on screen. I do take issue with the fact though that Lilith for this movie is portrayed as this gunslinger, which I just think is so lame, but again, this isn't canonical to the games. It's its own standalone thing, and when you watch the movie you'll understand why I say that, and this has been confirmed by them as well. The Borderlands movie is its own thing from the games entirely. Now, going on to Jack Black, he is one of the best parts of this movie. Claptrap, audibly, in my theater at least, got a lot of laughs, and even myself, I'm gonna be real with you guys, he actually got me laughing out loud, which is something I don't do in movie theaters a lot. Now, I'm gonna be real with you, I don't like movie theaters because I don't like being surrounded by people, especially when they're gonna be making a lot of noise, like rustling through bags and coughing, which always happens, and people getting up, going out, coming in. But I'm getting off track here. Overall, I have to say the one thing I've seen online a lot is that the jokes in this movie don't land. And I gotta say, man, if I'm Borderlands 3, if I'm the upcoming Borderlands 4, I'd be a little worried, because for me, as someone who doesn't find the majority of humor in the games to be all that funny, I laughed at the majority of jokes in this movie. Now, I would go into detail on which ones I did laugh at, maybe I will in the future, but I won't for the sake of spoilers in this video. But overall, I found the comedy of Borderlands, because it does have a lot of jokes, just like the games do, to be actually very humorous. And then the last thing that I've got noted down here in my little notepad is that overall, the set design and the callbacks to locations from the games are really, really well done. It's all done in a way which is very subtle, and there's lots of Easter eggs for people who know the games well to pick up on, and it's not done in a way where they throw it in your face. They don't mention a location or a piece of loot, for example, from the games and then wink at the camera. They do it and move on, which I'm very, very happy about. A lot of times in adaptations, they'll try to make a big point by focusing the camera on something which is very clearly supposed to be an Easter egg. Like when all those rap videos during 2018 or 2017 would feature the Beats by Dre on screen for like 20 seconds. This movie doesn't do that, and I really appreciate that. But overall, that does it for my review of this movie, but I'll give you some closing notes here. So, as you guys know, I don't do out of 10 reviews, I just do the good old classic if I recommend it or not, so I'll leave you with this. Borderlands is a movie which I think is undoubtedly going to flop. Again, it doesn't matter what I think about the movie, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you think about the movie. At the end of the day, this movie is going to bomb, and it's not my job to care whether it does or not. It's my job to consume it because I am a consumer. So ultimately, the way I feel about this movie as a consumer is that if you're a Borderlands fan and you go in there expecting mindless fun, and you aren't expecting the greatest movie ever, you're just going in there to watch some action unfold, you're gonna have a decently fun time. Or maybe you won't, but I did. I liked the Borderlands movie. But I will say that I do not recommend this movie to people people who aren't Borderlands fans. The pacing is off, a lot of the characters aren't properly introduced, and if you're not a fan of the Borderlands games, and if you haven't even played a Borderlands game, you're probably going to be lost for most of the runtime. And ultimately, if anything, I wish there was more of the runtime, because the Borderlands movie itself wasn't all that bad. And if you're listening to social media and you're going into this movie viewing it through the eyes of social media, then you're already on a step one course to failure, because ultimately you should go in there expecting it for what it is, and that's a video game adaptation, which is ultimately always going to be a coin flip on whether it sucks or not. For me, I don't think it sucks. But I also don't think it's the greatest movie ever, and in fact, I think this movie is going to do more damage for the Borderlands IP than it's going to do good. So, that's my review of it. I don't know if Randy will unblock me after this, but there we go. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you left a dislike. Actually, don't do that. Please don't do that, guys. It's going to turn into a real cyberbullying campaign here. Anyway, that's my review of the Borderlands movie. I'm going to go fall asleep now, and I still need to take that shit. Alright, have a good day.